Dante Moore tweets he's one of the hot transfer quarterbacks in the portal. I think one of the things that's attractive about him is he's got a little bit of leeway in terms of how long he can play, a ton of eligibility as a young guy. Ohio State and Michigan looking to kind of renew their battle in the portal, this time going after him. He threw for over 1,600 yards and 11 touchdowns with 9 interceptions for the Bruins. Certainly looked like a young guy a lot of times. He's a Michigan kid, UCLA and Michigan, Oregon and Michigan in the mix before he chose UCLA. If you had to pick a school that would probably have the edge here to win this battle, Ohio State or Michigan, which is it?
So there's a few things working here. One is that we know for a fact Ohio State's quarterback room is wide open. You know, so assuming pretty much whoever transfers in as a quarterback from the big name tier 1 names, most likely Ohio State has looked them in the eyes and said, this is your battle to lose. So that's working. We don't know what J.J. McCarthy's decision is just quite yet. I will say, because of the Michigan ties, and we'll talk about some more options for Ohio State later, that what makes more sense to me, you mentioned he wanted to go to Michigan early in his recruiting before deciding to go to UCLA. It seems to me like there is a hunch that he may go back home to join his hometown team, the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah, I would say that the ability to sell to him that he would be the guy who would get the development that he wanted. And he put out when he announced he was in the portal that one of the things he was looking for was development. Well, if I'm Ohio State, I can say to you, listen, brother, you're going to get all the development because we're pushing our chips in on you. We want you to be our guy right now. And so we're going to develop the hell out of you this spring and this training camp and this summer to make sure that you can play. And I think that's attractive. You mentioned his ties to the state of Michigan. I think if I'm Michigan, I'm leaning all the way into that. Come back home, regardless of what J.J. McCarthy said. You told us in your announcement that the biggest thing for you is that development. Maybe you do take a year of JJ's back and you can learn from a guy who's potentially going to be a first-round pick. I mean, just outside of coaching, there is nothing better than being around a leader who understands the college football playoff, who understands how to beat his rival, who understands how to win Big Ten championships, and I think that's a big selling point there. I think Ohio State and Michigan both also need to lean into the rivalry aspect of this. Of course, as a Michigan kid, Michigan's had the upper hand. I think that works for them. But for Ohio State, you could be like, listen, dude, we haven't had a quarterback who really grew up around this rivalry in a long time, and you can be the guy that brings us back to prominence, because you can make an argument that they were one quarterback away from being able to actually win on the road last year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll take a look at, take a pulse of the Michigan fan base here in a second, but I do have to think about this and say Ohio State has a better track record to say and sell, we develop college quarterbacks better than Michigan does, right? That's a fair statement. But I think Coach Harbaugh's selling point is we haven't had the talent like you, Dante Moore. JJ was our only guy with that level of talent, and look what we've done with him. Look at what I've done with talented quarterbacks in the past. Andrew Luck, Kaepernick, some of the Alex Smith in the NFL. Harbaugh knows that his system allows guys to excel. So we can take a pulse of the Michigan fan base and look at what James Michael tweeted out, which is just this. Dante Moore has gifts. He looked absolutely talented, but extremely raw. And he said Michigan is a perfect system for him. And that's kind of my point I just made there leads me to this, to say, you know, I do think Michigan is a very stable team where they have consistently good offensive line. They do have a talented running game. I think for a young quarterback that's developing, that's one of the best benefits, is you can lean on that and then get into play action. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy has benefited significantly from play action, to help his own development, JP.
Yeah, I mean, system-wise, I think that you make great points about Michigan, and certainly when they have the run game going and they have a talented quarterback, it becomes a much better spot. When I start to look at what Ohio State can offer, I'm like, hey, look at this wide receiver room and all the talent you get to throw the football to. Look at the guys that we have put in the NFL. And, hey, if you feel like you don't necessarily fit the mold of what C.J. Stroud was, well, Justin Fields was a little bit of a different guy, and he got it done. Dwayne Haskins was a little bit of a different guy, and he got it done. So I do think that there are a lot of really good pitches either one of these schools can make. And both of these coaches are also known for their development with quarterbacks. So I think that he's going to have a tough choice there. Now, we had some Ohio State fan reaction as well, and AD tweets out, I would love to see Ohio State make a push for more. I love this play in the Under Armour game playing with Ennis and Tate. Ennis and Tate are two of the freshman wide receivers on the Ohio State roster. Brandon Ennis, Carnell Tate. And that's a part of what I think Ohio State can really sell is we've got young, great receiver talent that we can bring up with you, and y'all can be stars.
The truth is he looked great in the Under Armour game, right, with those two guys, but not so great at UCLA, right? It wasn't a perfect year. He looked like a young quarterback this year. Playing at this level is different. So as we talk about the quarterback transfer portal, maybe it's Dante Moore for Ohio State, maybe it's someone else, but one thing we do know is Ohio State is in the market for a quarterback after Kyle McCord announced yesterday, this is how this all got started, that he is entering the transfer portal. Now, McCord is one of 12 Buckeyes to enter the transfer portal, including a former 5-star wide receiver, Julian Fleming. So, JP, as our resident Buckeye, I got to ask you, what is going on in Columbus right now? Is it time to panic?
I don't think there's a lot of panic. I know people are looking at Kyle McCord, and of course this puts the Ohio State quarterback room in a bind. And the reports that are coming out said that McCord and his family met with Ryan Day and asked about what the future looked like and if there were any assurances that he would be the starting guy moving forward. And Ryan Day looked at him and said, I think that we have an obligation to have a quarterback competition here within our program. And Kyle McCord said, I don't have that much time left to play, and I led you guys to an 11-1 regular season record. I think I just got to go somewhere else. And so they have to hit on the next quarterback. I think that's pretty apparent. Now, I start going through the rest of the list, and I know you mentioned Julian Fleming, who's a 5-star guy who hasn't had the career that he wanted in Columbus. He's been banged up for part of it. Also has bricks for hands, and I think that really matters when we're talking about wide receivers. I don't know if that's as big of a loss. But you start going through the list. Amari Abor, you haven't heard of him. Cam Martinez was the guy who fell down in coverage against Georgia, essentially lost that game. Vic Cutler, guy who transferred in this past year and won the backup center job. He's back out. Evan Pryor has been banged up for a lot of his career. Ryan Turner, haven't seen him a ton. Kicker Parker Lewis and Jair Brown, Kai Stokes were two guys that had promise but got jumped on the depth chart. And as we mentioned, Kyle, you got Jacoby James and Reed Carrico, and it's a list of guys who haven't necessarily played a ton, and some of them have been in the program for multiple years. So I could see why they would want to go somewhere where they feel like they can play. The other thing is you start looking at the history, and a couple years ago, Ohio State had 19 guys transfer out. Last year they had 9 guys. They're at 12 right now. I don't know if this is necessarily like anything crazy right now.
Yeah.